Odia cinema is 78 years old. That is a fairly long period, considering that the medium of cinema itself is just about 128 years old. The first Odia movie, Sita Bibaha, complete with sound, was produced within 5 years of making of the first ever Indian sound film, Alam Ara. Since then, more than 550 films have been produced in Odia. Every year, about 25 to 30 Odia films are released, which compares well as far as numbers are concerned with the Marathi, Bengali and other regional language films. But it is not numbers that are significant by themselves. The question is the kind and quality of cinema we make. This again raises a very pertinent question. How well Odia films connect to Odia literature? How many Odia stories or novels are adapted into cinema? To find that answer, let us go down the history of Odia cinema. It was the year 1936 when Odisha acquired its first administrative identity under the British colonial rule and emerged as a separate state. The first Odia film, Sita Bibaha, was released almost within the same week in which the state of Odisha was formed. The maker of this first Odia film, Mohan Sundardev Goswami, adapted Kamapala Mishra's literary work, Sita Bibaha, to cinema. If the early Odia films like Lalita and Sri Jagannath used mythological stories, the later films were based on contemporary Odia novels. The film Ma marked the beginning of this secular trend. It was based on a novel by Gyanendra Verma. Odia cinema continued to draw its content from contemporary Odia literature through the 60s and 70s of the 20th century. Films like Amoda Bata, 1964, Abhinetri, 1965, Molla Jonna, 1965, Matira Monisa, 1965, and Adina Megha, 1969, were all based on novels written by well-known modern Odia novelists. They were not always great commercial successes, but they continue to be the historical landmarks in the evolution of Odia cinema because they gave the viewers a glimpse into the contemporary Odia society and had strong cultural roots. Towards the later part of the decade of 70s, a kind of degeneration set in. Odia cinema started losing its identity. Stories were taken from Hindi and other regional language films. Filmmakers even started copying the filmmaking styles from mainstream Hindi cinema and other regional language films. Of course, there were exceptions. Filmmakers like Parbati Ghosh made movie on Fakir Mohan Senapati's classic novel Chhaumana Attagunta. Brindaban Jena adapted Kanhu Charan's Sasti into cinema. Govind Tej made a film on Bibhuti Patnaik's novel Dhare Ka Jala Gare Luha. Jugal Devata made a movie on Bibhuti Patnaik's Badhu Nirupama. Sona Mukherjee adapted Kamal Lochan Garabadu's Ghara Bahuda to cinema. Prafulla Mahanti made Godavarisha Mahapatra's immortal story Magunira Sagada into a fine movie. All of them did attempt to make films based on classic Odia literary works, but most of them suffered heavily at the box office. Is it possible to attempt and adapt Odia short stories and novels into cinema? Can there be a genre of Odia cinema which will have firm roots in the Odia society and speak of the Odia life and lived experiences authentically and in a language which is intelligible and which uses the huge potential of the visual medium fully? Odia is a rich language of great antiquity and literary heritage and has been accorded the status of a classical language recently. Odia literature is amongst the finest of regional language literatures produced in the country. And yet, there are so few Odia movies made on Odia literary works. Is there an inhibition to make such attempt because of deeply entrenched belief that such movies are bound to fail at box office? Do we lack the audience for Odia cinema based on Odia literature? What is the way out? We tried to delve deep into the subject in this exclusive session of Utkal Literature Festival on literature through the lens, adapting literary works into cinema. We welcome the famous filmmakers, directors and cine stars of Odia film industry to deliberate on the subject in this session of ULF. We sincerely hope that this will be a modest beginning in the direction of making more and more Odia films based on Odia short stories, novels and novellas that will both serve the cause of popular literature and meaningful cinema.